Hello, Robs. We're back with Triad, a novel of the supernatural by Mary Leader. Chapter 11. Oh, no. Dr. Ambrose. No, I forget. I'm not ready to talk about him yet. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. I'm so afraid I won't get it all told. There have been so many obstacles deliberately put in my way, and setbacks too. Sometimes whole sections of my work missing that I have to redo, so it's hard not to get the sequence jumbled. It wasn't through any decision of my own that I at last sought psychiatric help. It was Alan who insisted. We talked it over in my hospital room after my doctors assured us that I wouldn't lose the baby, not if I was careful. I think you should see a psychiatrist, Branwyn, he said quietly the night before I returned home. I know what's in your mind, Alan, I faced him. I admit it was crazy being out there, and I can't blame you for thinking what you are thinking. You'll just have to believe me. I wasn't trying to commit suicide. That was truthful enough. All I'd been doing was trying not to. Then, why were you out on the bluff? He demanded. I shook my head. How could I tell him and make him understand? I don't know. All I remember is that I thought I heard voices. That was no lie. It sounded as if someone were crying for help out in the fog. So I went out to see what was the matter, and that was. But when I got there, I couldn't hear them anymore. Why didn't I just tell him everything? But then a vision arose of him trying to work it all out on his slide rule, and I knew it was useless. How could I possibly make him understand about Rhiannon? That she was now part of me. He'd think me mad. And then what else could he do but have me put away? I couldn't allow it. My baby was not going to be born in an asylum. He leaned forward with his arms on his thighs, his fingers interlaced, and his thumbs revolving around each other nervously. His eyes averted. I knew he was pondering whether or not to pursue the subject. By the way, thanks for covering up for me to the police, I said. It would have looked bad if they'd known I was out on the bluff. I should have thanked you before. What else could I have done? People talk, he answered simply, as he pulled the crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. Look what I found this morning, rolled up in a pair of socks. Do you have any explanation for this? One quick glance at the signature, and I deliberately knocked over my water glass as I reached for my reading glasses with trembling hands. My darling, it's been so long since we were together. Remember the night when I was wearing the black negligee? And we bathed in the moonlight on the balcony. Then I ran from you, but you caught my negligee and pulled it from me as I fled laughing through the house, until finally you cornered me and carried me back to the bed. I know I can make you happier than she can if you just give me the chance. I suppose I should be angry with you, but I forgive you, as you just haven't seen the difference between us. Don't let her push me out. Please, doll, I can give you so much more. I love you. I want to live too. XXXOOO, Rhiannon. By the time he had finished picking up the pieces of glass, I had myself under control. I was ready for him before he could continue. Why are you showing me this? I inquired coldly. Seems to me you haven't something to explain. You have something to explain. So Rhiannon was someone else all along, trying to tell me I'd use that name. I'd use the name. It didn't work. Alan simply ignored me. Bramwin, I don't know what you're trying to do. If this note was your idea of a joke, I am not amused. If not, if you don't remember writing it, then I'm worried. And you, about us, and about our child. Does this look like something I'd write? See how she spelled negligee? I bridled. No, it's not at all like you, he conceded, and that's what has me concerned. You never call me doll. No, wait a minute. Yes, you did. The night she refers to in this note, you called me doll then. Or don't you remember? I made no answer this time, just glared at him. You've got to believe me, Branwyn, he persisted. I've never lied to you. I love you. But if there's no mutual trust, we won't be able to work this out. I have to tell you that there have been times when you didn't seem yourself. Funny now I think of it, whenever I referred back to something that was said or that happened during one of those times, you always pulled a blank. I guess I was too much absorbed in my work to pay much attention, and I blame myself for that now. But I've been thinking things over, and I've come to some decisions. First of all, I've persuaded Jim to do the field work on the Kentucky job, and I'll manage the office and this way I'll be in town until after the baby's born. I knew how much that was costing Alan to let his partner do the field work he loved so much while he'd be stuck over a drafting board here. Alan had never desired another woman, of that I was certain. But his work is his mistress, and I long ago resigned myself to that division of affection. He is not a theoretician. He wants to be on the scene, within touch of steel and concrete, watching his creations go up inch by calculated inch. Alan, I can't do that to you, I demurred. I know how much the field work means to you. He responded instantly to my change in tone, and his big, rough hand closed over mine, knotted in the sheet. You can, and you will, he insisted. You see, I've already made the arrangements, but I do have something to ask of you in return, and that is to see a psychiatrist. I turned my face away to hide the tears rolling down my cheeks, but he saw. Now, darling, he tried to soothe me. I don't think you're psycho or anything like that, but I do feel there's something wrong. Maybe the shock of Timmy's death built up over the years until it brought on a form of amnesia. And what's more, I know that you are just as aware of it as I am, more so, which is proof enough that you're not. That I'm not insane? That's what you're trying to say, but you don't really mean it, do you? Of course you're not insane. I don't think that for a minute, he protested a little too vehemently. But I have seen the strained look on your face in the last year that was never there before, and there have been little things that didn't seem very important at the time, yet, added up, they are serious. For instance, there was the night I returned home unexpectedly, and you greeted me almost in a panic. Remember? You had the lights on all over the house. You said it was ESB that tipped you off that I was coming. I thought you were kidding, and I made that crack about AT&T. Then you did try to pass it off as a joke, but I realize now that you actually had no memory of my phone call. Something happened that night, didn't it? You were just about over the edge that time, weren't you? Still, I might have missed it if I hadn't found out about the kitchen having been repainted. I withdrew my hand. You really been keeping book on me, haven't you? How did you know about the kitchen? When I went to buy paint for the nursery and ballroom, Romy Wolf asked me if I liked the orange kitchen better than the pink one we had first. I couldn't understand what he was talking about until this week, when I borrowed your checkbook to pay the bills, and I happened to see your stub for the check you gave the contractor. Then there's something else. I waited, not daring to speak. Does the Beaux Arts Gallery in Omaha use purple wrapping paper? How do I know? What makes you ask? My words were barely audible. Because of a certain item in the amount of $35.50 that came in on this month's master charge. The gallery was apparently slow in turning in its slips. I don't know what to say. I have no memory of buying that painting, Alan, or even being in the gallery. They say pregnant women do strange things at times. Yes, that's what I keep thinking, he agreed. Now I know what you were driving at in some of those strange conversations we had on the way home. You know, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and the responsibility of a person during amnesia, and a lot of other things I haven't been able to tie in yet. But I won't go into those now. I thought things were better out in Colorado, that you were really getting over whatever was bugging you. That was one reason I suggested the trip for you. And then came Omaha. By the way, what happened in Dubuque? Why do you ask that? There was such a change in your mood after that. You'd been so quiet during the first part of the trip, except to ask questions no one can answer. Then suddenly you were gay as a debutante. You chatted nonstop all the way across Wisconsin, all the way except for the brief moments when we passed near the old farm. I'd fallen silent then, trying to block out guilty memories by thinking of the lovers who lay in the cave sealed by my uncle. Branwyn, are you listening? Alan persisted. I went into a church in Dubuque and I prayed, and I thought I had my answer, but it's all gone wrong again. I don't know how. It was at least a partial truth. I could look him in the eyes as I said it. Whatever it was, I wish you could find it again. You were like your old self all summer. I was sure it was all over, and I wasn't going to say anything, even when Wolf told me about the paint. I told myself there was no need to worry, and then to be gone just a few hours and come home to find you. He broke off, and I thought I heard him choke back a sob. I reached out and stroked his cheek, loving him more then than in any moment of passion we'd known together. As he pressed my hand to his lips, an invisible current flowed between us that transcended the sensual. In that instant, I wanted to brush away all the barriers of half-truths and lies behind which I'd been hiding, and I almost did, but he spoke first. I know there must be something deeply wrong for you to deceive me like this, because it's not like you, Branwyn. So give me credit for having more trust in you than you have in me. I lowered my head and picked at an imaginary spot on the bedspread in an effort to hide the color I could feel flaming in my cheeks. I knew the moment was lost, that he had inadvertently turned my stupid pride in on me again. You're right, Alan. There have been occurrences, was all I could bring myself to admit. I wish I could tell you about them, except that I don't know the explanation any more than you do, at least not one he'd accept. Please try to believe me, I pleaded. You're wise not to go to Kentucky, even though I know how much it will cost you, and I thank you for that. I'm always much better when you're home. And yes, I will go to a psychiatrist. All I ask is don't send me to some kook. You know what I mean, someone who will tell me that I hated my mother and desired my father or some such nonsense. What's this about hating your mother? Dr. Gordon, my obstetrician, who walked into the room just then, wanted to know. Oh, I was just lighting into Freud, I parried. Alan wants me to see a psychiatrist. Yes, I know, he said, sitting down at the foot of the bed and tapping his knee with his stethoscope. And I have just the man for you. He's not one to follow all the trite theories. In fact, he's rather a rebel among his colleagues, but he gets results, and that's what counts. He's an oddball, but one I think you'd like, Branwyn. He's witty, hasn't much time for Freud and Reich and that gang, makes up his own procedures, and for some strange reason they work, possibly because he goes by the theory that there's been too much generalization in psychiatry. People are individuals and do not necessarily react the same way in the same given circumstances. He says his psychotherapy is custom tailored. Perhaps I could trust someone like that, I said. There's another reason why I think you'd like him. He's a thoroughgoing intellectual. I don't mean an intellectual snob, but he just naturally has all kinds of varied knowledge stored in his head as if he'd been born with it. Right down your alley. But Branwyn, you'll see. I've already made an appointment for you next week. Dr. Ambrose is his name. Woo! When I know that name. Sounds familiar. Anyway, that's all. Goodbye. Goodbye, bros.